Me 39F with my 44M depressed colleague who has accused me of bullying him. A manager's nightmare. I manage a team of 12 people. I take my job seriously. I don't just want my team to meet expectations. I want them to thrive. I've worked hard to build an environment where people feel supported, where they can develop their skills, and where they know they can rely on their leadership. I've dealt with struggling employees before. People with mental health challenges. People facing personal hardships. People who lacked confidence or direction. I have always tried to help them. Sometimes I've succeeded. Other times, no matter what I did, it wasn't enough. But I always believed that as long as someone was willing to take responsibility for themselves, I could guide them toward success. And maybe that belief is what led me here. Because last year, I was assigned an additional team member. I wasn't asked. I wasn't given a choice. He was forced onto my team, and I quickly realized why. Every other manager had refused to deal with him. He had been shuffled from team to team, frustrating supervisors, making endless mistakes, and creating unnecessary drama. Each manager, in turn, had given up, deciding it wasn't worth the stress. Then he was given to me.
Why?
Because I have a reputation for being patient. Because I have helped struggling employees in the past. Because, apparently, I was the only one left who might have a chance of saving him. I should have known better. The beginning of the problem. From day one, it was obvious he wasn't just struggling, he was failing.
He was slow.
He made careless errors. He forgot basic instructions. I could explain the same process to him 5 times, and he would still do it wrong. His ability to retain information was non-existent. It wasn't just a question of needing training or practice. He was fundamentally incapable of keeping up with the demands of the job. But I didn't give up on him. I made adjustments. I reduced his workload. I changed his assignments to make them easier. I gave him extra time to complete tasks. I checked in with him constantly, making sure he felt supported. And yet, nothing improved. His mistakes kept piling up. Every time I corrected him, he had an excuse. He was tired. He was overwhelmed. He was having a bad day. It was never his fault. When he started complaining about physical discomfort, I fought to get him special ergonomic equipment to accommodate his obesity. I advocated for changes that would make his workstation more comfortable, hoping that if he was in less pain, his performance might improve. But it didn't. Still, I convinced myself that progress was happening. I kept telling myself that improvement took time, that patience would pay off. Then he made a mistake I couldn't ignore. The security breach. It wasn't a simple error. It wasn't a typo or a forgotten deadline. He sent out confidential personal information to someone who is not legally entitled to receive it. That wasn't just a workplace mistake. That was a security breach. That was a legal liability. When confronted, he refused to take responsibility. He had 100 excuses. He hadn't been feeling well. He had been distracted. He thought he was following instructions. It wasn't his fault, but it was his fault. This wasn't something I could ignore. This wasn't something I could excuse. He had put the company at risk, and there had to be consequences. So, I took formal disciplinary action. And that's when everything changed. The sick leave and the accusations. 3 days after receiving his disciplinary notice, he went on sick leave. That was over 3 months ago. He has not worked a single day since. Instead, he has filed a formal complaint against me, claiming that I bullied and harassed him, that my treatment of him was so cruel, so unbearable, that he is now mentally incapable of returning to work. Let me be absolutely clear. This is a lie, and I can prove it. Before his security breach, there had been discussions about moving him to another team for health and safety reasons. When he heard this, he begged to stay with me. He became highly distressed and insisted that moving him would damage his mental health. He said I was the only manager who had ever been supportive. He fought to remain under my leadership. I have signed documentation where he acknowledges that I was helpful, where he explicitly states that I provided support, where he repeatedly refused reasonable accommodations I offered, shorter hours, fewer days, longer breaks. Yet now, suddenly, I am his abuser? The meeting I dread. Now I have to sit in a meeting with him and his mental health support workers. And I have no idea how to handle it. I have every piece of evidence in my favor. My bosses know the truth. They do not believe his accusations. But that doesn't change the reality of the situation. I will be sitting across from someone who has rewritten history in their head, someone who has cast themselves as the victim and me as the villain. What do I say to someone who refuses to take responsibility for their own actions? How do I argue with a narrative they have already convinced themselves is true? The unspoken consequences. This situation has drained me, not just because of the stress, but because of what it means. I have always believed in giving people chances, in being patient, in offering support.
But now?
Now, I wonder if that belief has made me an easy target. Because what happens to managers like me? We try to help. We try to be kind. We try to be patient. And when we finally hold someone accountable, we are punished for it. And the people who suffer most? My actual team. The people who show up every day. The people who do their work. The people who don't make excuses. They are the ones picking up the slack. They are the ones watching this unfold, wondering if one day they will be caught in the same nightmare. So, I ask again, what do I do? How do I handle this meeting, knowing that no matter what I say, they have already decided I am the problem? How do I go back to believing that helping people is still worth it? And, most of all, how do I protect myself from this happening again?